Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine walking through the bustling streets of Old Delhi and coming across the Turkmen Gate.
Hmm.
It's more than just an old structure, right? It's like a physical echo of a connection that spans centuries, a tangible link between the heart of India and the lands we now know as Turkmenistan.
Absolutely. That gate, the Turkmen Gate in Delhi you mentioned, it's right there in our source material. It's a profoundly symbolic starting point, isn't it?
Yeah.
It instantly tells you that this relationship isn't, completely new, even though modern diplomatic ties are relatively recent.
Right?
It signifies a historical flow, maybe a movement of people, perhaps ideas that left a mark deep within India. Our source uses that powerful phrase, it stands as a symbol of honor to the Turk soldiers.
Oh,
Think about that. Soldiers, people, significant enough in Delhi's history to have a gate named after them. It suggests, well, a level of interaction, presence, maybe even integration that goes far beyond just a casual acquaintance. It's a deep historical anchor.
exactly. And that historical anchor is just the beginning of what we're diving into today. We've got this document right here, this detailed source material you've provided,
Hmm.
and our mission is pretty clear. Sift through it, pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the insights about India-Turkmenistan relations, and help you understand why this connection actually matters. From ancient history all the way to modern energy security.
Yeah, consider us your guides through this text. We're going to highlight the key facts, try to connect the dots for you, and help you see the bigger picture that emerges directly from these pages.
Okay.
It's all about getting a detailed, nuanced understanding that comes straight from the source,
Yeah.
bypassing the headlines and really digging into the specifics.
And the journey we're taking today is outlined in the material. It's quite comprehensive, actually. We'll trace the relationship from those ancient roots, the Silk Route,
Yeah.
right up to current high-level diplomacy and critical energy infrastructure. We'll cover the historical background that sets the context. They'll delve into the commercial and economic links, explore the fascinating realm of cultural and educational ties,
Right.
dedicate significant time to the major TPI pipeline project, which seems pretty central to the modern relationship,
Absolutely essential.
and analyze recent high-level engagements like that important 2015 Prime Minister's visit mentioned in the source.
The goal here really is to equip you with a solid, well-informed perspective on this relationship, understanding not just the names or the projects, but the why and the how behind their interactions, based entirely on what your source material presents.
Okay.
It's about grasping the significance of this, well, multifaceted connection.
So let's follow the thread our source gives us, starting right at the beginning, the foundational elements, the basic background, moving from those ancient routes through to establishing modern diplomatic ties.
Okay, so our source immediately establishes that India and the region of Turkmenistan share these ancient connections. It points specifically to the Silk Route.
Right, the famous Silk Route.
Exactly. Now, the Silk Route wasn't, a single road like we often imagine. It was this complex network of trade routes crisscrossing Eurasia for centuries. This network was basically the superhighway of its time. It facilitated the exchange of not just silk, obviously, but spices, precious metals, technologies, religions, and crucially, people.
Yeah.
And the lands that make up modern Turkmenistan. They were vital hubs along several branches of this route, strategically positioned there in Central Asia.
Makes sense.
So the existence and the constant traffic along these routes meant that interaction between the Indian subcontinent and this region was just inherent to the system. Merchants, travelers, scholars, others. They were constantly moving, creating this persistent, maybe informal, but definitely present connection over vast periods. It laid a kind of historical substrate, you could say, for later interactions.
And as we mentioned right at the start, the Turkmen Gate in Delhi serves as that powerful, tangible symbol of this historical connection. The source's emphasis on it being a symbol of honor to the Turk soldiers really is key, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests a presence that wasn't just fleeting, but impactful enough to be commemorated architecturally.
Right.
These weren't just transient visitors, they were likely soldiers who played a role in the historical power dynamics of Delhi, maybe the surrounding areas at different times. Their presence left a physical, lasting mark, literally carved into the landscape of one of India's most historic cities.
It's a reminder that the ties are rooted not just in trade, but potentially in political and military interactions too, way back.
Exactly. Moving forward now into the modern context, the source highlights Turkmenistan's geography as inherently important. It's located near the strategically vital Caspian Sea
Okay.
and critically possesses large tracts of natural gas reserves.
Okay, so why is that location and resource combination so strategically significant, especially from, say, a country like India's perspective looking at it?
Well, in the geopolitical landscape, location is always a factor, right?
Mm.
But being near major bodies of water like the Caspian adds layers of potential connectivity influence.
Right.
But the mention of large tracts of natural gas reserves, that's the real game changer highlighted here. In the 21st century, energy resources are absolutely central to national power, economic stability.
No doubt.
So for energy-hungry economies like India's, securing reliable and diverse sources of energy is a top national security and economic priority. Turkmenistan, sitting on significant gas wealth, automatically becomes a crucial potential partner.
Right.
Its resources position it as a key player in regional energy markets, making its stability and connectivity of direct interest to countries looking to fuel their growth.
So natural resources definitely elevate its strategic profile. But our source also points out a very unique foreign policy stance for Turkmenistan: permanent neutrality. What's that about?
This is a fascinating and critical detail the source emphasizes. Turkmenistan has formally declared permanent neutrality, and what makes it particularly significant is that the United Nations recognizes this status.
Oh, okay, so it's internationally recognized neutrality.
Exactly. This isn't just a self-proclaimed stance. It has international validation. What does this neutrality imply? Well, it means Turkmenistan aims to avoid getting tangled up in military blocs or alliances, pursues a non-aligned foreign policy, and often positions itself as a facilitator or mediator in regional issues rather than taking sides. For countries like India, dealing with a permanently neutral state can offer a degree of, well, predictability and stability, especially in a complex region like Central Asia.
That makes sense.
It might make Turkmenistan seem like a more reliable partner for long-term projects because its foreign policy is less likely to be suddenly disrupted by shifts in global alliances or conflicts. It attempts to create this zone of nonpartisanship in its international dealings.
Interesting. So strategically located, resource-rich, yet committed to neutrality.
Yeah.
What else does the source tell us about its economy beyond the gas?
The source notes Turkmenistan's major agricultural outputs are cotton and wheat, and it specifically highlights that it's a major cotton exporter.
Cotton.
Yeah, this detail is important because it shows that while energy is paramount, Turkmenistan's economy isn't solely dependent on gas. Cotton is a significant cash crop, a major export commodity.
Right.
This provides another avenue for economic engagement, particularly with a country like India that has a massive textile industry, hungry for raw cotton. It points to a potential, maybe smaller scale than energy, but still a consistent area for trade.
Okay, so against this backdrop of history, geography, resources, and this unique foreign policy, how did modern diplomatic relations formally begin between India and Turkmenistan?
Formal diplomatic relations were established in 1992, and the timing here is crucial context.
Okay, 1992.
Yeah, 1992 was the year right after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Turkmenistan became an independent state. India was relatively quick, actually, to recognize and establish ties with the newly independent Central Asian republics.
I see.
This reflects India's foresight, perhaps, in engaging with these states right from the moment of their modern inception, recognizing their potential geopolitical and economic importance in that post-Soviet era.
And the source highlights some early, pretty significant steps India took to build this relationship, doesn't it?
Yes, it gives two specific examples that are quite telling about India's early approach.
Yeah.
Firstly, in 1995, India initiated a program specifically to train Turkmenistan's diplomats.
Train their diplomats. That's interesting.
It is. Think about the significance of that. This wasn't just, an exchange program. It was capacity building. It shows India was investing in the human capital of the newly independent state's foreign service.
Right.
Training diplomats helps a country navigate the complexities of international relations. By ushering this, India wasn't just establishing a link, it was actively helping Turkmenistan build its international presence and potentially fostering a generation of Turkmen officials who would have a direct connection and understanding of India. It's a smart, long-term play in relationship building.
Definitely sounds like it. And then there's this other initiative mentioned starting in 1996, this Track 2 dialogue for peace and security. Can you elaborate a bit on what Track 2 diplomacy involves and why it's important here?
Sure. Track 2 diplomacy is distinct from the official Track E government-to-government relations. It involves non-governmental actors, think academics, think tanks, experts, maybe former officials engaging in informal dialogue.
Okay, so unofficial talks.
Exactly. Why is this important, especially for sensitive topics like peace and security? Because the informal nature allows for more open, maybe more candid discussion, brainstorming, exploring potentially controversial ideas without the constraints and pressures of official negotiations.
Well, I could see that.
It can help build trust and understanding below the surface, identify areas of common ground, and sometimes even generate policy recommendations that can later be taken up at the official level. The fact that this Track 2 dialogue has been ongoing since 1996, focused specifically on peace and security, that underscores a consistent, long-term commitment from both sides, as highlighted by the source, to discuss strategic issues in a less formal but potentially very impactful way.
So it shows a desire for deeper understanding on critical regional challenges. That seems vital for a robust relationship.
Absolutely. It paints a picture of a relationship being meticulously built on multiple layers, right from the start of Turkmenistan's modern independence formal ties, investing in diplomatic capacity, and fostering informal strategic dialogue.
Yeah, it's far more nuanced than just, shaking hands and opening embassies.
Precisely.
Okay.
It shows a comprehensive strategy aimed at building a durable connection.
Okay, moving from these foundational elements, our source material next shifts focus to the commercial diplomacy and economic links that underpin the relationship. It mentions the presence of an institutional architecture for this. What does that mean?
Yes, the source states that such an architecture exists. Now, the document doesn't go into the precise details of what this architecture looks like, whether it's standing joint committees, specific trade protocols, regular economic forums, that kind of thing.
Right.
But the mention itself is significant. It tells us that the economic relationship isn't just a series of random one-off transactions. It implies there's a structured, established system in place to manage, facilitate, and potentially grow commercial ties.
Okay, so a framework.
Exactly. This kind of framework is essential for providing predictability and support for businesses on both sides looking to engage in trade and investment. It suggests a formal commitment to fostering economic partnership.
And speaking of trade, what does the source actually tell us about the goods being exchanged? What constitutes the bilateral trade, according to this document?
The source provides specific details here. From India's side, exports to Turkmenistan include pharmacy products, machines, and plastics.
Okay, pharma, machines, plastics.
Yeah. This mix gives us some insight into India's economic strengths, right? India has a globally recognized pharmaceutical industry, known for producing affordable medicines. The export of machines and plastics points to India's manufacturing and industrial base. This basket of goods suggests India is exporting value-added products, reflecting its capabilities in these sectors.
And what about the other way around? What does India import from Turkmenistan, according to the source?
India imports inorganic chemicals, raw cotton, and synthetics from Turkmenistan.
Raw cotton. That connects back to what you said earlier.
Exactly. The import of raw cotton aligns perfectly with Turkmenistan's designation in the source as a major cotton exporter. This is a direct and logical trade link, with Turkmenistan supplying a key raw material needed by India's massive textile sector.
Makes sense.
The import of inorganic chemicals and synthetics likely feeds into India's various industrial processes, perhaps related to textiles, manufacturing, or other chemical-dependent industries. So you see a pattern emerging: India exporting manufactured goods and pharmaceuticals, and importing raw materials and intermediates.
The source also draws specific attention to a key meeting back in 2015.
Yes, the Fifth Intergovernmental Commission meeting IGC held in Ashgabat in 2015. The source is very explicit about the dominant theme of this meeting, the TPI pipeline.
The dominant theme, okay.
Yeah, this detail is crucial. It tells us that at the highest level of economic dialogue between the two countries in 2015, TPI wasn't just on the agenda. It was the central, most pressing issue being discussed. This really underscores the sheer importance and focus placed on this energy project within the bilateral economic relationship at that particular time.
Got it. And beyond just trade figures and official meetings, what does the source indicate about direct business presence? Are Indian companies actually there?
The source notes that a lot of Indian companies are into joint ventures in multiple sectors in Turkmenistan. Now, this single sentence is packed with information.
Clear.
A lot suggests a significant number of Indian businesses are operating there. Joint ventures is a key model for international business, especially in emerging or perhaps less familiar markets.
Why joint ventures specifically?
Well, they allow Indian companies to partner with local Turkmen entities. This potentially lets them leverage local knowledge, networks, regulatory understanding, while sharing risks and capital. It's often a preferred entry strategy. And the phrase multiple sectors is also telling. It indicates that Indian business interest isn't narrow, focused on just one or two areas, like only energy. It's spread across various parts of the Turkmen economy, suggesting diversification of investment and business engagement. This points to a broader economic interaction happening on the ground.
So the commercial picture, as drawn by the source, shows a structured approach, a trade flow reflecting strengths and needs, a clear focus on major energy projects like TPI and high-level talks, and a significant diversified presence of Indian companies operating through joint ventures.
Exactly. It's a far more active and organized economic relationship than maybe just minimal trade volumes might suggest on the surface.
It really does add layers to how the economic ties function, showing both the governmental structure and that private sector dynamism.
Precisely.
Shifting focus again, our source highlights another vital component of this relationship: education and cultural diplomacy. These are often called soft power tools, right? Aiming to build connections, goodwill at the people-to-people level.
Absolutely. Soft power is incredibly important for building deep, long-lasting relationships that aren't solely dependent on strategic or economic calculations. And our source provides specific examples of India's educational support for Turkmenistan.
One mentioned is the provision of Akash tablets.
Yeah.
What exactly are Akash tablets, and what does providing them signify?
So the Akash tablet was an initiative back in India aimed at developing a very low-cost tablet computer. The idea was to facilitate digital education and access to information, particularly for students.
Okay, a low-cost educational tablet.
Exactly. Providing these tablets to Turkmenistan is a specific, concrete gesture. It indicates India is sharing its own technological developments and educational initiatives with Turkmenistan. It's a form of developmental assistance focused specifically on enhancing educational capabilities through technology. It shows India engaging beyond maybe traditional aid by offering tools developed within its own ecosystem to help improve learning opportunities there.
In link to that, the source mentions the establishment of an IT Center for IT skill training.
Yes, this is another targeted effort in the education and capacity building realm. Setting up an IT training center directly addresses the need for modern technical skills.
Which are crucial everywhere now.
Absolutely. In today's digital world, proficiency in IT is essential for economic development, competitiveness, individual opportunity, you name it. By helping to establish this center, India is directly contributing to building the skill base of the Turkmen workforce. This suggests a recognition of Turkmenistan's development priorities in the tech sector and India's willingness to lend its expertise in IT education and training, an area where India has significant global standing.
The source also points to the provision of iTech scholarships. What are those?
ITEC. It stands for the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. It's a flagship program of the Indian government, offering training and scholarships to professionals and students from partner countries across a really wide range of fields: technical, economic, administrative, etc. Providing ITEC scholarships to Turkmen students is a classic and highly effective method of cultural exchange and capacity building. It brings young Turkmen individuals to India. They study in Indian institutions, they experience Indian society and culture firsthand.
Right, immersion.
Exactly. This creates a pool of individuals back in Turkmenistan with a direct personal connection to India. It fosters goodwill, mutual understanding, and potential future collaboration based on those shared experiences and networks. It's really an investment in the future generation of the relationship.
So the educational support seems multi-pronged, providing technology, building infrastructure for training, and directly investing in human capital through scholarships.
Precisely. It targets different aspects of educational development and leverages India's strengths in technology and education.
Okay, now on the cultural side, the source mentions the Namaste Turkmenistan program. What was that?
Yes, this was organized by the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, the ICCR, back in 2014. The source explicitly frames this as part of cultural diplomacy.
And the purpose of cultural diplomacy is essentially,
It's about building bridges between people, right? Sharing aspects of your culture to create familiarity, positive associations, going beyond just formal state interactions.
yeah, making connections.
Exactly. Cultural diplomacy aims to foster mutual understanding, respect, and goodwill between countries through the exchange of cultural elements, arts, music, dance, festivals, food, ideas, practices like yoga. An event like Namaste Turkmenistan would have likely showcased various facets of India's rich and diverse cultural heritage.
Hmm.
The purpose is to make India more relatable, accessible, maybe appealing to the Turkmen public. This kind of people-to-people connection fostered through cultural exchange can soften perceptions, build familiarity, and create a more fertile ground for political and economic cooperation down the line.
Right.
It shows India engaging with Turkmenistan not just at the governmental or business level, but also by sharing its identity and traditions.
It's a way of creating a more human dimension to the relationship, which feels incredibly important for long-term sustainability. It complements the strategic and economic ties beautifully, as presented in the source.
It really does.
Okay, now let's turn to what seems to be really the cornerstone of the modern economic relationship and a major focus of our source material, the TPI pipeline. This project is highlighted repeatedly and explicitly linked to Indian energy security.
Yes, the TPI pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, is a hugely ambitious, very complex project, absolutely central to understanding the modern dynamics discussed in this document. Our source traces its origins, noting that the idea itself was first floated way back in 1995.
1995, that's quite early.
It is, and interestingly, it was floated by a private firm called Breedis Corporation.
A private company initiating the idea for a massive multinational infrastructure project like this. That seems noteworthy. You might expect this to be a government-led concept from the start?
It is indeed interesting, yeah. It suggests that the potential commercial viability, the logic of connecting Turkmenistan's massive gas reserves to the energy markets of South Asia, was recognized by the private sector relatively early on. Private firms often identify market opportunities that governments might address later, or perhaps through different means.
But realizing it would take more than just a private company.
Oh, absolutely. Realizing a project of this magnitude, crossing multiple borders with significant geopolitical complexities that would always require substantial political will and cooperation at the state level. The private initiative likely just sparked the initial interest, put the idea on the table.
So the idea was born in 95.
Yeah.
What were the key steps that followed, according to the source? How did it move forward?
The source points to a significant step in 2008 with the involvement of the Asian Development Bank, the ADB.
Ah, the ADB.
Yes. The ADB conducted a feasibility study. Now, for a project of this scale, we're talking thousands of kilometers of pipeline, crossing diverse terrains, political boundaries. A feasibility study is absolutely non-negotiable.
Right. You have to know if it's even possible, financially, technically.
Exactly. It's a deep dive into the technical challenges, the estimated costs, potential environmental and social impacts, legal and regulatory hurdles, market demand. It assesses whether the project is genuinely viable and identifies the major risks and requirements.
And having an international body like the ADB involved must add a layer of credibility and technical expertise, right?
It certainly does. The ADB is a major multilateral development bank with significant experience in financing and overseeing large infrastructure projects in Asia. Their involvement lends technical rigor to the feasibility assessment and signals a degree of international confidence and support, which can be crucial for attracting investment and coordinating complex multi-country initiatives like this.
So what was the direct outcome of that 2008 feasibility study? Did it give it the green light?
Well, according to the source, this study led to a TPI framework being signed for export of natural gas from Turkmenistan.
Okay, a framework agreement. What does that actually mean at this stage?
A framework agreement is essentially an initial understanding. It sets out the basic principles, the broad structure of the cooperation. It's not the final detailed contract, but it signifies political commitment from the participating countries, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, to pursue the project. It outlines the fundamental basis upon which further negotiations will proceed regarding the export of gas.
Got it. So from an idea in 95, feasibility study in '08, leading to a framework agreement, what came next in actually solidifying the project?
The source notes that after the framework, the modalities, the specific details, the nuts and bolts of the project were fine-tuned in 2010 in Ashgabat.
Fine-tuned modalities. That sounds deceptively simple.
Doesn't it? But this phrase, used in the source, points to a critical phase of really intense negotiation. Think about what this entails for a pipeline project spanning four sovereign nations with vastly different political landscapes, economic conditions.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly complex. What kind of modalities would need such fine-tuning? I mean, I imagine things like agreeing on the exact route, right? Security arrangements, who's responsible for safeguarding it across thousands of kilometers,
Absolutely.
the transit fees. Afghanistan and Pakistan would surely charge for letting the gas pass through to India.
Definitely a huge point of negotiation.
Legal frameworks for disputes, technical specifications, and financing. How do you finance something this massive? Billions of dollars, multiple international banks, investors. Just agreeing on the gas price itself must have been a monumental task.
Exactly. The source's simple phrase, modalities were fine-tuned, really encapsulates the grappling with all these incredibly intricate technical, financial, legal, and security challenges. And the significant outcome of this fine-tuning process in 2010, as stated in the source, was the conclusion of an intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, moving from a framework agreement to an intergovernmental agreement. That sounds like a major step up in commitment.
It absolutely is. An intergovernmental agreement is a formal treaty between the participating governments. It signifies a much stronger political will, a legal obligation from Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India to move forward with the project.
Right.
It elevates the project from just an intent outlined in a framework to a binding commitment at the state level, providing a much more solid foundation for implementation.
And the source provides very specific details about the intended supply chain within this agreement, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It states the agreement was for the supply of natural gas from the Daulatabad gas fields to Fazilka.
Daulatabad and Fazilka.
Yeah. Daulatabad is one of the world's largest natural gas fields, located in southeastern Turkmenistan, confirming the massive scale of the intended supply source. And Fazilka is a city in the Punjab region of India, located near the border with Pakistan. This detail precisely defines the origin point of the gas within Turkmenistan and its intended reception point or gateway into the Indian market. It provides a concrete picture of the pipeline's intended path and purpose.
So we have this history of the project laid out in the source. From a private idea to ADB study, framework agreement, complex negotiations, and finally an intergovernmental agreement specifying start and end points.
Yeah.
How does the source directly connect this ambitious project to Indian energy security?
Well, the source includes a section specifically titled TPI Pipeline and Indian Energy Security.
Ah, okay, very explicit.
Very explicit. This linking tells you exactly how the project is viewed from the perspective of the document's authors. While the source doesn't provide, say, an exhaustive analysis of how it ensures security, the stated purpose is crystal clear. TPI is presented as a means of securing a long-term supply of natural gas for India.
So why is securing a long-term supply via a pipeline like this so vital for India's energy security strategy? What's the underlying logic there?
Well, India is a nation of over 1.4 billion people, right? With a rapidly expanding economy. That means its energy consumption is constantly increasing. Ensuring a reliable, affordable, and diverse energy supply is absolutely fundamental to sustaining this growth and maintaining national stability. India currently relies heavily on imports of various energy sources, often transported by sea oil, LNG. Relying too much on a single source or a single transit route, like sea lanes, can leave a country vulnerable to supply disruptions. Think geopolitical events, piracy, blockades.
Right, vulnerability.
Exactly. Natural gas is also viewed as a relatively cleaner burning fuel compared to coal and oil, which aligns with environmental goals too. So securing a direct pipeline supply from a country like Turkmenistan with its vast reserves and that stated policy of neutrality we discussed, it offers the potential for a stable, continuous source of gas. A pipeline, once operational, can provide a more predictable flow, potentially lower transport costs compared to shipping liquefied natural gas, LNG, although, importantly, it introduces transit risks as it crosses other countries.
True, that's the flip side.
It is. But the explicit connection in the source underscores that for India, TPI isn't just seen as a commercial venture. It's framed as a strategic imperative, aimed at diversifying its energy mix and securing a vital resource for its future needs.
It really highlights the immense strategic weight this single infrastructure project carries, tying together resources, complex international cooperation, and fundamental national security concerns like energy supply.
Right.
All is presented within the source material.
Absolutely. It's the centerpiece, in many ways, of the modern economic relationship described here.
Okay, let's bring our focus forward again, specifically to the analysis provided in the source regarding the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Turkmenistan in 2015. High-level visits are always significant events in bilateral relations, aren't they? Signaling commitment, fostering direct engagement.
They absolutely are. A visit by the head of government is really the highest level of diplomatic engagement. It signifies the importance of country places on the relationship. The source notes that the Indian PM visited Turkmenistan in 2015 and met with the president at the time, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedow. These leader-level meetings are crucial. They build personal rapport between heads of state. They can provide political momentum to ongoing discussions and projects like TPI, presumably, and they're often where key decisions are made or agreements signed. It sends a strong signal, both domestically and internationally, about the priority given to the bilateral relationship.
And the source highlights a specific symbolic gesture made during that visit. What was that?
Yes, it mentions that the Indian Prime Minister gifted President Berdimuhamedow a special handcrafted horse saddle.
A horse saddle.
Yeah. This detail might seem small, but it's culturally very significant in the Central Asian context. Horses hold immense cultural importance in Turkmenistan and the wider region, symbols of heritage, pride, strength, hospitality.
Okay, I see.
So, gifting a high-quality, handcrafted saddle goes beyond just a standard diplomatic gift. It demonstrates an understanding of, and respect for, the host country's culture and traditions. Such gestures can be powerful in building personal connection and goodwill between leaders, which can then cascade down and positively influence the broader bilateral relationship. It shows thoughtfulness, an effort to connect on a human and cultural level.
That makes sense. Beyond symbolic gestures, the visit also saw the inauguration of facilities reflecting cooperation in specific areas, according to the source.
That's right. The source specifically mentions the inauguration of a traditional medicine and yoga center in Ashgabat.
Connecting back to the cultural diplomacy theme.
Exactly. This is another concrete example of India's soft power diplomacy at work, building on the themes we discussed earlier. India has this rich legacy of traditional medicine systems like Ayurveda, and yoga, of course, has become a globally popular practice associated with health and wellness. Establishing a center for these in Turkmenistan serves multiple purposes. It promotes India's unique cultural and health heritage. It offers potential health benefits and alternative practices to the local population, and it creates a physical space for ongoing cultural exchange and learning about India. It reinforces that cultural pillar of the relationship and shows India contributing to public well-being in Turkmenistan, as highlighted by the source.
And importantly, the visit resulted in the conclusion of a key formal agreement mentioned in the text.
Yes, and this is a notable development detailed in the source. The conclusion of a bilateral defense cooperation agreement.
Defense cooperation. That sounds significant, especially given Turkmenistan's neutrality.
It is significant. It moves the relationship into the security realm, which is often a more sensitive area than trade or culture, particularly, as you say, given Turkmenistan's neutral status.
But what does the source specify this defense agreement actually entails? Is it about joint exercises, arms?
Well, according to the source, the agreement involves regular high-level bilateral defense visits between the two nations.
Okay, so focused on visits.
Yes. This means planned, routine exchanges and meetings involving senior military officers, defense ministry officials, perhaps strategic planners from both India and Turkmenistan. While the source limits the description to visits, this still represents a formal mechanism for dialogue and engagement on security matters.
So, given Turkmenistan's permanent neutrality, how might this type of defense cooperation, focused on visits, be structured or interpreted? What does initiating this suggest about the evolving relationship based on the source's detail?
That's where the specific wording from the source is really key. The mention of a bilateral defense cooperation agreement is strong language, definitely. But the detail limiting it to regular high-level bilateral defense visits is also very specific.
You're right.
This suggests the agreement might be focused more on dialogue, consultation, maybe information exchange regarding shared security perceptions or regional threats, rather than, say, joint military exercises or arms deals, which could potentially conflict with a strict interpretation of permanent neutrality.
Okay, that makes sense within the neutrality context. So,
Initiating this level of engagement, even if limited to visits, suggests that both countries, as perceived by the source, see value in discussing security issues together. It implies a certain level of strategic trust is being built. Perhaps they share concerns about regional stability, terrorism, other non-traditional security threats that can be discussed within the bounds of Turkmenistan's neutrality. The fact that this agreement was concluded during a high-level visit elevates its importance and shows the relationship is indeed expanding into new, more sensitive areas, requiring careful navigation to respect Turkmenistan's stated foreign policy. It adds a significant third-pillar security dialogue alongside the economic and cultural ties, as highlighted by the outcomes of this visit described in the source.
So if we analyze that 2015 visit through the details provided in source, the leader-level meeting, the culturally sensitive gift, the establishment of cultural wellness centers, and crucially, signing this defense cooperation agreement focused on visits, what overall picture does this paint of the India-Turkmenistan relationship at that specific time?
It paints a picture of a relationship that is being actively and deliberately strengthened across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It's clearly not solely focused on the big-ticket TPI project, even though that remains central.
Right.
The visit demonstrates engagement at the highest political level, a continued investment in soft power through cultural and educational initiatives, and a significant, carefully managed step into the security domain. It shows India pursuing a multifaceted, comprehensive approach to building a robust partnership with Turkmenistan, respecting its neutral status while still exploring avenues for cooperation even in sensitive areas. It's a relationship growing in complexity and significance, as evidenced by the varied outcomes of the single high-level engagement detailed in the source.
It truly shows a strategic depth in India's engagement, building connections on many different levels, not just focusing on one thing.
Exactly. A holistic approach seems to be the takeaway from the source's description.
So we've journeyed from ancient gates and silk routes through the foundational aspects of modern ties, examined the layers of commercial and cultural engagement, delved deep into the ambitious TPI pipeline project, and analyzed a key high-level diplomatic visit. Now, let's try to connect all these threads and reflect on why this detailed understanding, drawn directly from the source, matters to you, the listener, today.
Yeah, we've synthesized the various aspects our source material presented. The surprisingly deep historical roots, the ongoing and structured economic and cultural ties, the immense strategic importance of the TPI energy project, and the significance of diplomatic exchanges like that 2015 Prime Minister's visit.
And throughout, we've seen how Turkmenistan's strategic location in Central Asia, its significant natural gas reserves, and its unique foreign policy of permanent neutrality really shape its interactions.
Yeah.
Why is understanding India's relationship with a Central Asian country like Turkmenistan important in the current global and regional context? What's the bigger picture relevance here based on the source?
Well, based purely on the source material we've discussed, it's important because it gives you a window into key geopolitical dynamics playing out in Eurasia. Turkmenistan sits in a critical neighborhood, right? Bordering Afghanistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, the Caspian Sea.
A tough neighborhood.
A very complex neighborhood.
Yeah.
Its position and resources make it a focal point for energy transit routes, regional connectivity initiatives, and discussions about stability, particularly concerning Afghanistan, which is obviously a major concern for India and the region. For India, as this deep dive from the source shows, engaging with Turkmenistan isn't just about bilateral friendship, it's directly tied to its vital national interest in energy security explicitly stated regarding TPI.
Right.
It's also clearly a piece of India's broader strategy to enhance its presence, connectivity, and influence in the strategically important region of Central Asia, which faces its own complex set of development and security challenges. Understanding this specific relationship with all its historical, economic, cultural, and now security layers helps you grasp one specific but crucial segment of India's foreign policy landscape and the wider geopolitical dynamics playing out in a key part of the world. It helps you see India navigating this complex chessboard based on the moves described in the source.
And what does this detailed look, pulled straight from the source, reveal about the characteristics of India's approach to foreign policy in Central Asia more broadly? What kind of strategy does it suggest?
It suggests a multi-pronged, patient, and pretty comprehensive strategy. It's clearly not a purely transactional approach focused only on, say, resource extraction or trade figures.
Hmm.
As seen in the source, India leverages historical connections, it builds
Yeah.
structured economic ties, invests significantly in soft power through cultural and educational exchange, development aid like that IT training.
Hmm.
hmm
And is increasingly engaging in security dialogue, all while seemingly adapting its approach to respect the specific foreign policy postures of its partners, like Turkmenistan's neutrality. It shows India is aiming for deep, long-term engagement built on multiple pillars, recognizing the complexity and importance of the region beyond just immediate economic gains.
And I think that's exactly where the true value of a deep dive like this lies, pulled directly from your source material. It takes you so far beyond a simple news headline, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You might see a brief report about the TPI pipeline or a prime minister's visit, but going through a detailed document like this provides the granular specifics, the year diplomatic ties began, the precise mix of goods being traded, the name of the specific gas field supplying the gas, the distinction between a framework and an intergovernmental agreement,
Right.
the cultural significance of a horse saddle gift, the careful nature of a defense agreement for a neutral state. Precisely. Those specific details, pulled directly from the text, are what provide the richness and the nuance. They show you the concrete actions, the specific projects, the exact agreements, the cultural considerations that together constitute this complex relationship. It gives you a much more solid and detailed foundation of factual knowledge, straight from the source, allowing you to understand the dynamics at play far more deeply than superficial reports could ever provide.
It's like seeing the intricate weave of the fabric, not just the color from a distance.
Well put. Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the India-Turkmenistan relationship, all guided by your source material. We started way back with the ancient connections symbolized by the Turkmen Gate, discussed Turkmenistan's strategic geography, its significant resources, and its unique stance of permanent neutrality, recognized by the UN.
We detailed how modern diplomatic ties were established post-1992 and explored India's early engagement through diplomatic training and that Track 2 dialogue for peace and security, highlighting the long-term thinking involved there.
We then delved into the structured commercial links, the specific composition of bilateral trade, the centrality of the TPI pipeline as the dominant theme of economic discussions in 2015, and the significant presence of Indian joint ventures across multiple sectors in Turkmenistan.
We also spent time on India's soft power efforts, discussing the specific educational support like Akash tablets, the IP Skill Training Center, the iTech scholarships, alongside cultural diplomacy initiatives such as the Namaste Turkmenistan program, and understanding their role in building those crucial people-to-people connections.
Crucially, we focused heavily on the TPI pipeline as a central case study. We traced its history from a private idea in 1995 through the ADB feasibility study in 2008, leading to a framework, to the fine-tuning of complex modalities and the conclusion of the intergovernmental agreement in 2010 for gas supply from Dalalabad to Fazulka,
Yeah.
and understanding its explicit significance for Indian energy security as clearly stated by the source.
And finally, we analyzed the 2015 Prime Minister's visit, seeing how it reinforced ties through symbolic gestures like the horse saddle, cultural and health initiatives like the traditional medicine and yoga center inauguration, and that notable step of concluding a bilateral defense cooperation agreement understood in the context of Turkmenistan's neutrality as likely focused on high-level visits and dialogue.
This entire comprehensive exploration has been a deep dive specifically into the source material you provided, extracting its core insights to give you a detailed, multi-layered picture of this important bilateral relationship.
And that's the power of this kind of focused deep dive, isn't it? Getting those precise details and insights directly from the text itself.
Absolutely. So to leave you with a final thought to ponder, building on everything we've covered today directly from the source. Given the sheer scale and ambition of the TPI project, the complex navigation required for defense cooperation with a permanently neutral state, and the, let's face it, challenging geopolitical environment of Central Asia. What do you think are the most significant long-term possibilities and, perhaps more importantly, the potential challenges for the future trajectory of India's multifaceted relationship with Turkmenistan?
That's a big question.
It is. What internal dynamics within these countries or external regional factors hinted at by the strategic context in the source might ultimately influence the success and depth of these ties going forward?
Definitely something worth considering as you process this deep dive. A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into India-Turkmenistan relations.